I'm wishing on a star.
Your challenges are a young group from Houston.
You are alright just on that. Without the children. Children of the world, reach out.
They can't hit that song today.
The hip-hop rapping Girls' Time.
The formation of the group Girls' Time would reach heights that not many local groups could ever imagine. At the forefront, a child prodigy unlike anything you've ever seen, that would ultimately lead to a dramatic takeover. Behind the innocent smiles of children were the intentions of adults intertwined in a power struggle that would leave some of the children devastated, a marriage in turmoil, and the eventual coronation of a queen, while launching the careers of a group that would be a force in the industry for years to come. This is Girls' Time. The original story of Destiny's Child, aka Girls' Time, began with two women named Denise Seals and Deborah Lede. The original idea was to put together a musical review with the girls singing group as the main attraction. They also formed a legal partnership using their initials, D&D Management. They even rented an office space. They did everything they could to get the word all over Houston, taking out ads in the Houston Chronicle, as well as putting out the word to local churches. It seemed like every mother in Houston showed up with their baby, talking about, look at Lil Magic, ain't she good? Yeah, right. After 3 months of searching, one day Deborah got a phone call out of the blue from a local dance instructor saying that she had been working with an 8-year-old girl that was so talented she would have to be seen and heard to be believed.
So it's real, it's so real, it's real. Tell me the love that people see inside my heart. I feel like mine, like home.
Tina had placed Beyonce in these classes to help her become more socially active. Beyonce had been bullied a lot in school because of her light complexion, and she literally didn't have any friends. After hearing Beyonce sing, Deborah and Denise were blown away. They immediately knew they had something special. After a long and grueling search, finding Beyonce was more than worth the hassle. So Beyonce would now finalize a musical review that had been carefully crafted by Denise and Deborah that would look something like this. There was M1, Girls' Time, Destiny, and they also had dancers. M1, Millicent Lede, was the hype master. She was Deborah's daughter. Then there was Girls' Time, who was Beyonce, Stacy, and Jennifer. They were the featured singing group. Then you had Destiny, who was Latavia and Chris. They were the rappers and also dancers. Then you had Nikki and Nina, twin sisters. They were also dancers, and they were Latavia's cousins. Even though D&D Management was fresh in the industry, they actually got off to a great start, booking the review for several performances. They even performed in front of 2,000 people in the Astrodome. But money would get tight after getting locked out of their office. Deborah and Denise knew they needed help. Entering Andrea, who attended church with Denise. Andrea had a good job at the Houston Power Company, but she also had received a $500,000 settlement from the unfortunate death of her husband. When Andrea was 28 years old, traveling on the road with her husband, 2 sons, and baby daughter, they were involved in a tragic accident. Andrea and her 2 sons, Chris and Armin, survived, but unfortunately her husband, Dwight, and baby girl, Shauna Marie, did not. Andrea was hurt so bad she could barely make the funeral, and to make matters worse, 2 years later, she would be diagnosed with lupus. But Andrea liked the idea of becoming involved with the girls group. Actually, before his death, her husband, Dwight, had left his job as a teacher to pursue becoming the next Berry Gordy in the music industry. So Andrea kind of saw this as a way of continuing his legacy. She even bought and read a book about management so she could learn as much as she could. Andrea, as the primary investor, would now take the lead, and she would work out a side management deal with D&D Management. Her first order of business was to strip the review down to a much smaller girls group. She just felt like the review had too many moving parts. To this, she would task Lonnie, a writer who Deborah had brought into the fold. Lonnie also brought in Tony Moe, who was another young writer. So after the cut, who would be left was singer Beyonce, rapper Latavia, and dancers Nikki and Nina. Tina. Lonnie and Andrea then added singers Calandria and Ashley, and the new and more palatable group would be called Girls Tyme. Andrea also developed a great relationship with the parents, as some of the parents, such as Tina, didn't like Deborah, who was a very blunt person. One night, Tina tried to wish Beyonce happy birthday before a performance, but Deborah wouldn't allow her backstage since it was close to showtime. She had a pet peeve about that, and it was a good thing Andrea stepped in and took Miss Tina backstage because somebody was about to get cussed out. So Tina never liked Deborah after that. In fact, Deborah wasn't really Matthew's cup of tea either. So now the girls would be rehearsing at Miss Andretta's home, who they affectionately called Miss Ann, and she developed a deep, deep love for them. There is no way to approximate the loss of a husband and child, of course, but for Andretta and her sons Armin and Chris, the girls would come to be family. And to Miss Ann, they were nothing short of an absolute blessing.
And now I learn the meaning in your story. And there's enough love for me to stay. I wanna be where you are. Oh, anywhere you are. Oh.
Now that Girls Tyme were officially 6 members, the girls immediately formed a very close sisterhood. It wasn't about who sung lead or who was the best, they were just happy being together. They would spend many nights having slumber parties in the Knowles guest house, laughing, being loud, and then playing truth or dare in the middle of the night, you know, just being girls. They were also doing performances in the mall to sharpen their craft. It was actually Ashley who first began to stand out from the group. Ashley had a very mature voice that was more polished than Beyonce's at that time. So she in effect became the lead singer, and Beyonce didn't mind at all. She was having the time of her life. For Andrea and Lonnie, this was not a dry cut decision though, because for what Beyonce didn't have in voice, she made up more than double with her stage presence. Look, Beyonce had a passion that was just simply unmatched by most children her age. Kenny Moore, a former military singer and friend of Andretta's who was also brought in, he felt as if Beyonce's passion was taken away from Ashley. He also thought it was making the rest of the girls look like they weren't working as hard. Moving along, in early 1991, Andretta would arrange for the girls' first recording session at a top-of-the-line studio where they would record 2 songs called Sunshine and Say It Ain't So.
With all the boys and girls.
The songs would feature Ashley singing lead and Beyonce singing second lead. And everyone felt that the songs came out great. Well, almost everyone. Matthew seemed to think that one of the girls sounded a little better than the other, and he would make this known to Andrea and Tony Moe when he caught them alone. He made it the point that he felt like Beyonce had something special over the rest of the girls, and this was a little troubling to Andrea and Tony, and from that point forward, Andrea would watch Matthew a little closer. Soon after, Andrea would actually secure the girls a spot in a music convention on the West Coast called the Gavin Convention, where music label reps would be attending, as well as celebrities like LL Cool J who would be performing. Andrea was able to secure this highly coveted slot through a friend named Teresa who was an A&R at Sony, and Andrea would pay for the flight and hotel accommodations of all the kids as well as all the parents. The girls would actually practice for the event by performing in front of Miss Tina's clients in the beauty salon that she owned, and the trip would go very well. They would show up and show out. Andrea would secure a contact and Plant Studios executive Arnie Frazier, who wanted to bring the girls into the studio, and this was no regular studios. Plant Studios was frequented by some of the industry's elite.
Say your name and your age and what you do in the band.
Hello, I'm Beyonce Knowles. I'm a lead singer and hi.
And what's your favorite vegetable?
Carrot?
So Arnie and Andrea would finance a second trip back to Cali for a recording session, but this time they were on a budget. So the only ones who would be attending would be Ashley, Beyonce, along with Andrea, Kenny, Lonnie, and Tony. No parents, no exceptions. Of course, this didn't sit well with anyone, especially Miss Tina, who damn near lost it at the airport. You know Matthew had to calm her down. But everything went according to plan. They made it to Cali and went right into the studio. But something happened in the studio that nobody saw coming. Ashley struggled to sing a song called Blue Velvet that was written by Tony Moe, who was an innovative writer. So the song didn't have a normal cadence. So he expected her to struggle some, but Ashley struggled a lot. And as time went by, she was becoming more and more flustered. Meanwhile, little Miss Beyonce had an attitude and became increasingly irritated. Kenny had to tell her to settle down, but he knew why she was mad, so he asked her did she want to give it a try, and the rest was history. Beyonce laid that song in 15 minutes and left everyone in the room in awe. They honestly felt like they were watching a young Michael Jackson, not for just how quickly she sung it, but how amazing it sounded, and every adult in the room knew that they were witnessing something special. And then Beyonce would record another song that also sounded great, and poor Ashley just sat in the corner to herself with her head down, and Kenny and Andrea felt bad. But everyone knew that there was a seismic shift that had taken place within the group, and from that moment, Girls' Time would never be the same.
I don't know what started, babe. I guess it's here on this 45th page, 'cause that's when I first laid eyes on you. Isn't it true?
When the dust had settled in Sausalito, the girls had made quite an impression. Word was beginning to filter through the music industry about Beyonce, as Arnie had sent the tape to many of his contacts. That's the name that constantly kept coming up. There was also buzz about Latavia. They actually ended up flying her out to join the crew in Cali so that she could rap on some of the tracks that was recorded. Latavia was becoming a hot commodity because she already had a national television commercial that she was featured in.
I want style, body and shine. A look that's totally on mine. Hair so soft, silky and free. I want something just for me. Just for me. No light conditioning, relaxer cream.
So now back in Houston, with all the parents and children huddled up at Andrea's house, Andrea would play the music. One by one, she played each song, and with every passing song, Matthew and Tina were smiling more and more. But on the other side of the room, Ashley's parents, Carol and Nolan, were staring straight ahead with blank looks on their faces, not looking at anyone in the room. When the songs were finished, the girls were jumping up and down, smiling from ear to ear. But when Beyonce tried to talk to Ashley, she just turned and walked away. "You should have told me," Carol told Andrea. Ashley's parents were so upset about the music they would leave without speaking to anyone. Andrea would then do something that would later come back to haunt her, and Deborah would let her know that she made a big mistake. See, Andrea informed Matthew about the buzz that Beyonce had received on the West Coast, which of course affirmed everything that he had already been saying. And with Tina telling him to hush, he would say it even louder for everyone to hear. But after the meeting, Beyonce for some reason seemed to be upset, and they were wondering if she heard the adults arguing with each other in the other room. Matthew and Tina recognized that Beyonce was not your average child, and even at a young age, she not only carried the weight of herself, but also the weight of the girls on her shoulders. So whenever the girls had a bad performance, she would blame herself.
Oh, to you.
You were alright just on that. Without the children, you were kind of.
There would be times where she would completely shut down and not speak to anyone, and it would be very difficult to get any information from her since she would always internalize her feelings. So whenever she was bothered, Tina and Matthew would give her a couple of days to herself to sort things out, even allowing her to miss school if needed. Over the next 6 months, more tensions continued to build. Beyonce was being featured more to the no's delight, while Ashley was being pushed to the background, not to the liking of the Davises. In 1992, Andrea would have a serious bout with the lupus, and she was hospitalized for a week. As soon as she got home, she received a phone call from Matthew saying that he wanted to meet up. Matthew would then inform Andrea that he felt compelled to have a stronger hand in the group for his daughter's sake. He wanted to be co-manager with 50-50 say, and if Andrea didn't agree, he would be pulling Beyonce from the group. Andrea knew that Matthew would be a problem sooner or later, but this was completely unexpected. She tried to put up a fight. She even went to Tina, but to no avail. Tina agreed with Matthew. Andrea and her team actually went back and forth on whether they should proceed without Beyonce, but ultimately did not move forward. They just couldn't go back to the record labels without the girl that created the biggest buzz. So Andrea and Matthew would restructure the management contract to make Matthew a 50-50 partner while still keeping a side deal with D&D management. Matthew would also call a meeting at his house complete with armed security to make the announcement, which caught everyone off guard. A meeting to which Deborah was not welcome. Denise spoke out against it as she was blindsided, but she was on her own. So she stormed out of the house, not without first getting a nasty look from Tina.
Where are you guys from?
Houston,
Yell. Just yell.
Texas.
Maybe not that loud. Okay.
So in the fall of 1992, Arnie Fraser was able to book Girls Tyme for a slot on the TV show Star Search. This of course was a huge deal. The girls by now had been spending most of their days rehearsing at the Knowles home, which of course was Matthew's idea, to the dismay of Andrea. Kelly, who was originally took in by Miss Ann, was also now living with the Knowles, as her mom had to move back home to Atlanta after losing her job. She would remain with the Knowles until her adulthood. Tina knew that Andrea was upset over the Matthew situation, and she would do her best to smooth things over at Sunday dinner, which the Knowles and the Tillmans did every Sunday together for years. They had become very close, so much so that they could openly discipline each other's children, just like family. And since their father had died when they were young, Matthew even became a father figure to Chris and Armin, and Matthew even treated them as such. So Tina would reassure Andrea that this was something that they just had to do for the sake of their daughter. Andrea would express that she felt like they were treating her as if she didn't know what she was doing, and she pointed out how the girls had recently performed for the televised Miss Black America pageant, at which they also got to meet Boys to Men. The group saw the girls performing and they requested to meet them. Andrea felt that this showed that they were on the right track, but in reality, there wasn't much else that she could do, so she ultimately accepted it. Matthew would build a wooden deck to use as a makeshift stage with the Casio keyboard and their own mics. Matthew would have the girls practicing all day long for weeks at a time, and they loved it. That stage, those mics of them was everything. Matthew also, to his credit, enrolled in the Houston Community College where he would take some management classes. He was all in at this point, and he would push the girls hard. Choreographers, vocal teachers were brought in weekly. They would even jog while singing to build up their fitness for performances. So with Star Search on the horizon, the girls were ready to let the world know it was Girls Tyme. But right before it was time to leave for Florida, Andrea would have another bout with her lupus, and she would have 2 fingers and 1 toe amputated. Now dealing with her health, she was a little troubled when she heard that Matthew had flew to Cali to meet with her contact, Teresa Whites, without her. But even with prosthetics, she still kept going, maintaining her job at the Houston Power Company while spending most of her free time with the girls. But due to her health, Andrea could not make the trip to Star Search.
Your challenges are a young group from Houston, the hip-hop rapping Girls Tyme. Perfect score, the challenger Girls Tyme receives 3 stars. Going through.
They lost? Oh man, wow. Losing the Star Search competition was not something that anyone was prepared for. The girls were soaked in tears in the immediate aftermath of the decision. They were crying as soon as they closed the curtains. And things would only get worse in the meeting the next day when Kelly would take the brunt of the blame, as Matthew and Lonnie felt that she was singing off key. So they dug into her hard. They dug into the rest of the girls as well. When the truth of the matter is, all around, it just wasn't one of their best performances. Tina and a few other parents became visibly upset at how they were talking to Tina Kelly and the rest of the girls. But after Tina screamed at Matthew and Kelly's defense, she being forever the Rock would calm things down, and they were able to put it behind them, and they took the girls to Disney World. Listen, when it came to the girls, no one in that room was used to losing. They never lost in Houston. This would actually be the final motivating factor in Matthew deciding to leave his corporate job and dedicate himself to the group full time. See, after the girls lost Star Search, all of the buzz about them around the industry went away, and Arnie was unable to secure them a record deal. So Matthew, with Tina's reluctant but ultimate support, felt compelled to devote himself to the girls full time. Tina knew when Matthew dedicates himself to something, there's no stopping him, but no job also gave Matthew time for other things, and his continued infidelities, as well as their now struggling financial situation, will ultimately drive him and Tina apart. Now only surviving off of Tina's income, they had to leave their big, beautiful house, and Tina would take Beyonce, Kelly, and Solange and move into a townhouse without Matthew. And to further complicate things, Carolyn was completely done with the way her daughter Ashley had been treated, as well as her being relegated to just a quick rap verse at the end of the song in Star Search. Ashley wasn't even a rapper. To her, that was done purposely by Matthew to further elevate his daughter. And if Matthew was going to be the co-manager, then she was done. Tony Moe also stormed out with the Davises, as he was in complete agreement. Even though Beyonce was now singing lead, Ashley was too talented of a singer to be just given a rap verse at the end. So finally, to the confusion, anger, and dismay of Ashley and the rest of the girls, she was no longer a member of Girls Time, which just didn't seem fair. Beyonce did not take the news well, and despite her age, she would openly challenge Matthew, as she demanded to speak to Ashley herself, but Matthew or Andrea would not allow it. The rest of the girls were also upset as well as confused, and the girls never saw or spoke to Ashley again. It was as if she had just fallen off the face of the earth, said Nina. All of those years together, over, just like that, done.
Hi, my name is Ashley Davis, and I'm 11 years old, and I'm a lead singer.
And favorite vegetable?
My favorite vegetable is celery.
That hard, man. This is a tough question, huh? Okay, next.
So Ashley would be replaced with a young singer named LaToya Luckett, who just happened to be a classmate of Beyonce's. Matthew and Andrea agreed that it would be best to change the name of the group in order to distance themselves from Star Search, and the girls' new name would be something fresh. And in the meanwhile, sometime after Star Search, a VCR tape of the girls was sent to Daryl Simmons, a Grammy Award-winning producer who worked with L.A. Reid and Babyface. And Daryl, who loved what he saw, would fly the girls out to Atlanta to begin recording, where they would now be amongst established as well as up-and-coming artists like Usher Raymond.
My relatives on my son's side, my oldest daughter's side, we got these little girls, you got to see them. So they sent me like a videotape. Back then it was a VHS tape. And they sent me a tape. I go, wow, these little girls are incredible. They were dancing, they were singing. And so I flew to Houston to see them. I was like, wow, they're really incredible. I think at the time they may have been, I don't know, 13, 14 maybe, I can't remember. And so I signed them to my production company. At the time, they were called Girls Time. I brought them to Atlanta, and I changed their name to the Dolls because they were so cute. They remind me of little dolls. You know, so they were around Usher. They were around TLC, Monica. They were around all these other people that we were working with. And ironically, when we did the showcase, nobody liked them. Nobody liked them. Clive Davis didn't like them. Puffy didn't like them.
Wow.
Kenny didn't like them. I was so disappointed. I was so hurt. I had spent so much money, outfits and staging and hair. And at the time, you got to remember, it was hat to the back, baggy clothes, crisscross, TLC. And these girls were beautiful. They had sexy clothes on. Oh, those little girls are too sexy. They shouldn't be wearing that stuff. But I knew Beyonce was a star. She could sing. She's incredible to be that young. Finally, Sylvia Rhone loved them.
Daryl would actually rename the girls the Dolls, and he would take their music to his connection at Elektra Records, who was interested in signing the girls, but there was a catch. Elektra did not want the dancers as a part of the package, and it was decided that the 6-girl group must now be trimmed to 4. What does that mean? What it meant was that a vocal coach would be brought in for dancers Nikki and Nina, and also rapper Latavia. The 3 girls would actually compete in a sing-off, off, Latavia got the nod, which was bittersweet knowing that her cousins who had been there since day one with D&D management was now gone. And unfortunately, just like Ashley, there was no goodbye, no return phone calls, nothing. It's believed that Matthew forbid it. For Nikki and Nina, of course, that would be devastating. They would spend many nights crying their eyes out. Although they would later see Latavia, they would never see or talk to Beyonce, Kelly, or LaToya again. By this time, Andretta's health was also rapidly declining. She had more fingers and toes amputated. Her legs were so swollen that she could barely walk, and she also had an oxygen tank. And even though everyone was excited about what was happening, it was Andretta that was on everybody's mind. At some point, Andretta's state would become debilitating, which was very difficult for everyone to see. Chemotherapy had thinned her hair badly, but Tina would continue to style Andretta's hair as much as she could, as she always did. Beyonce and Kelly, now age 15, would even spend a weekend with Miss Ann so they could be there for her. But being around her in that state was very difficult for them, and Beyonce would cry as a result. But she was still with the girls wherever they went. Matthew would ultimately require Andretta to restructure the 20% management fee so that he would receive 15% to Andretta's 5%, due to the fact that she was now physically unable to contribute the same, to which Andretta did not fight. At this point, due to her health, she was just tired, and the $500,000 settlement that she received was all but dried up, which a significant amount had been poured into the girls. But there would be complications with Daryl and Matthew, and also Sylvia Roan and Matthew, that would cause Elektra to drop the dolls. Matthew didn't quite understand the extremely slow pace of the music industry, and he had ruffled too many feathers, and everybody was devastated. Drop? What do you mean drop? They couldn't believe it. The girls cried their hearts out. But the dolls would have one more lifeline in Teresa White, who had moved up from scout to A&R at Sony. And Matthew would send her a tape of the girls. Not long after, they would audition for her live. Matthew actually cut the audition short because he felt that the girls' noses were stopped up. He told them the day before not to go swimming.
I don't really care if Teresa's here. See the price you're paying for going swimming the other day? They can't hit that song today. They can't do it today? Yeah, they're of course.
But Teresa was impressed by the performance, and she set up another audition where the girls had to perform directly in front of Sony execs in a small closed-in hotel suite where they barely had any room to move. The results? Finally a record deal. A deal with Sony. After all the pain, sweat, tears, and hard work, the dolls finally did it. They couldn't believe it. But at first, the girls would have to endure one last name change due to the label's discovery that the name dolls had already been taken.
Amazing grace.
On May 16, 1997, Andrea Tillman's suffering would come to an end as she sadly passed away, leaving the girls, her sons, and everyone who knew her devastated. And the girls, now going by the name Destiny's Child, would release their first single, No No No, 5 months later. And they would dedicate a song to her on each of their first 2 albums. Destiny's Child would become a Grammy Award-winning R&B group that would sell millions of records while thriving in the hearts of many fans. And the group would go through a few more changes. 4 became 3, and 3 ultimately became 1. And she, Queen Bee, would cement her name alongside the greats, selling millions of records worldwide while garnering an astonishing 320 million followers. Beyonce would later fire Matthew as her manager, not her father, and she would go on to become one of the most successful artists in history. Destiny's Child, Beyonce.